Today's news is so important that I think I should change shirts just for the occasion. So I'm gonna go do that. Boom! Here he is! Yeah! That's just the most adorable thing ever? Anyway, back to the news. Our first big story today comes from NRG, or NRG, the best miracle team NA has seen in a long time. Now I say that because they actually beat Envyus in a best-of-3 series at the Counterpit quarterfinal event. They barely snuck by on map 1 and then barely beat them, and I believe it was a double or maybe a triple overtime on map number 3 in a best-of-3 series to best Envyus in the Counterpit quarterfinals. Like I said before, NRG is an amazing team, but they did actually have one stand-in player, and this took to Twitter like fire. I mean, I've never seen so many, a direct diversity of people actually tweet about this at once. You had Comcasters, CSGO commentators, all the CSGO players that weren't at Counterpit all tweeting about this and saying things like this. As you can tell, the entire CSGO community didn't exactly know what the correct words to say were, although the F word was a common choice. And overall, it was amazing to see the reaction to everyone and how everyone really reacted when they saw great gameplay. All in all, it was really awesome to see all these players that weren't even at Counterpit tweeting about this, saying how, you know, these evenly matched teams were competing heavily in these overtime matches, and it was just really fun to watch. So it's always good to see the community coming together and just having really fun games to watch. I mean, I for one love watching close games. No one likes watching those blowout games, like for instance Astralis versus Torpedo, where they beat them 16-2 and then 16-6, or vice versa, one or the other. They just dominated them. It was really no fun to watch. I love these close games like NRG versus Envyus, and it was just really fun to see everyone tweeting about it. And again, the CSGO community loves that kind of stuff, and it was great to see. Although NRG made the amazing run in the quarterfinals past Envyus in a best-of-3, 2-1 was the final score of that. Unfortunately, they met Astralis today, and they were absolutely crushed. I believe the scores were 16-3 and 16-9. I could be wrong on those scores, but it was a brutal beatdown. Astralis has been looking really, really well in this tournament of Counterpit finals, so they're going on to the finals to play, I believe, Na'Vi. So it should be a great matchup, and again, Astralis looking amazing, and unfortunately for NRG, they just didn't show up to play today. It was kind of weird how you saw them versus Envyus, and there was this team who had this huge upset. They just didn't show up to play the same way today. And again, Twitter took to that, especially Thorin making some rude remarks about it. But again, you can always count on Thorin to be honest with the team. And of course, what is CSGO news without our friend Thorin getting involved on Twitter? I'm not quite sure if Thorin was actually dissing NA players or saying that EU teams are overrated, but here's his tweet. And another reasonable argument Thorin actually presented later on Twitter was NRG's best player, Tabsen. He was actually a German stand-in player for PTR, Peter, who I talked about a few days ago in CSGO News. You can always rely on Thorin to actually distribute the facts correctly, and here's what he tweeted out last night. Who actually broke his foot and couldn't make it to Counterpit LAN finals in time for this series or these games. I think he actually is in Croatia now watching, but he still can't play for the team. So Tabsen is permanently their stand-in, but they did get knocked out today. Now, when Tabsen was in versus Envyus, he was arguably their best player. He had the highest KD, as well as winning them Dust 2. He went off, I think he had, 30 kills is what I heard. But again, he was one of those players who had a remarkable game on their first map and actually probably would be their sole reason for moving on to actual map number 2 and 3 and having a chance to win the best-of-3 series. And so Thorin pointed this out, saying it's kind of funny NRG, a pro team, performing so well against Envyus, but their best player is a stand-in player or a substitute, which is a valid argument. And like I said earlier, Thorin also made sure to point out that this NA team was actually over half European players. They have 3 European players, including Peter Gurney, who usually plays instead of Tabsen. Also in the news, a team I actually dissed on in a previous episode of CSGO News, Team Renegades actually took on Team Liquid in a best-of-2 series and was able to win one of their maps, which is pretty awesome for Team Renegades. When I first saw this matchup, I thought Team Hiko had it in the bag, but they ended up dropping one match to Team Renegades. They're looking a lot better than I thought, and they weren't definitely a team that I thought was going to be a consideration for actually taking a game versus Team Liquid. And again, I was dissing them because Cloud9 swept them 2-0, but that's a great win for Team Renegades. Although they did lose a second map, that's still a nice way to come out. And because I was talking about Cloud9 earlier, again, they did sweep Team Renegades, I believe it was 2 days ago now, in a 2-0 series, which means they might compete with Team Liquid and also in a best-of-2 series versus Luminosity Gaming. Cloud9 did take map number 1. Now, it was a close game, and they did end up losing match number 2 versus LG in a 16-7. I don't know which map it was on, but it was a pretty bad loss. But still, you have to wonder, going into LG Columbus in the next couple weeks or so, or less than 10 days, Cloud9 is looking pretty strong. Again, sweeping teams like Team Renegades may look bad on paper, but then you have Team Renegades beating teams like Team Liquid, and then Cloud9 taking a match versus LG. So when it comes down to LG Columbus, the best of 1 out of group plays, I think it's double elimination if I'm wrong. Please correct me if I am wrong. But, anything can happen on these map draws. It all comes down to map selection and what maps these players end up playing on. There is hope, boys. and girls, there is hope for America. It's super tiny, but it's there. Lastly, a quick note to touch on. Now with G2 Esports performing so well and Envyus losing to NRG in these quarterfinals, Envyus has had no significant major or tournament wins in the past 3 to 4 months now. You have to really consider with the rankings becoming updated every day now, G2 is most likely the best French team in the CSGO community now. So pretty crazy to think, a few months ago, probably 5 months ago, Envyus way up there dominating G2 in the rankings, and now G2 is probably most likely the outright champion between all the French CSGO teams, which is awesome for them. G2, congratulations. You guys have been playing off the walls lately, and this should be a really interesting twist to the MLG Columbus tournament coming up. Out of these group stages, you always expect all these, these lower teams to not perform well, but now you've seen teams like Cloud9, you've seen teams such as G2 and Cloud9 do better things than you would expect. So in these best of 1 playoffs in the MLG Columbus tournament group stages, you don't know what's going to happen. You have teams like Flipside Tactics who have taken games versus Navi. They've taken one wins versus big teams. Obviously in the best of 3 or the best of 5 series, Flipside Tactics, these little teams like Splice have no chance, but there's always the upset chance. You never really know what's going to happen. So I'm really looking forward to MLG Columbus and to see what's going to happen out of those group stages. Also in the news, ESPN is actually reporting on esports. I know they have been for quite some time now, but this is the first time I've actually seen ESPN headlines for CSGO. And they actually released their top 20 power rankings for all these teams. And I was really interested to see who ESPN has reporting on this and if they're quite accurate. Now, I went over their top 20, and their first 4 picks were quite accurate. They had Fnatic, Luminosity, Navi, and Astralis all in the top 4 spots, which is definitely reasonable. It was their last 14 or 15 teams where I was really wondering where they pulled their information from. Obviously, I have my own personal opinion. I'm going to go over those now with all of you guys and where I disagree and agree with. Obviously, I do already agree with their top 4, but the last ones I almost disagree with every single one, and you'll see why. First off, they did have Mouse Sports at number 5. Again, I do agree Mouse Sports to be a top 8 team, but they barely bested G2. They've only taken a match versus Fnatic in the past month or so, and they took big losses to Navi, LG, and they've been sweeped in best of 1s by a lot of teams. I agree they're a top 8 team, but I'm not sure I believe them to be a top 5 team. Then for some reason, ESPN Esports actually placed the Tempo Storm team out of Brazil, the team just behind LG Sports, at the number 6 spot, which really surprised me because they're definitely not a top 6 team. If you guys remember back in the MLG qualifying stages, they actually the team that lost to Flipside Tactics. It could definitely be Tempo Storm and MLG Columbus. They lost to them and only had wins over Cloud9, CLG, and other teams, and one of their key wins, according to ESPN, was actually over Envyus back in Katowice, which is several months ago, and now we all know how poor of a team Envyus truly is, especially in this last month or so. Another crazy thing is this website actually placed both Flipside Tactics and Cloud9 at the number 11 and 12 spots coincidentally, both ahead for some reason of actual Team Liquid. Team Liquid, the team who's actually swept and beat both those teams in a best of 3 series within the last month or so. Oh, you think Splice is a top 20 team in the world? ESPN, who are your reporters? And one of their certified victories, why they actually are top 20, is because they beat the Vex squad, or the X-Vex squad. The Vex squad isn't even a top 30 European team, and if you beat them, all of a sudden you're the top 20 team in the world. Makes sense, ESPN. I'm not mad. In better news, at least we have Thorin showing the CS community some hope. He's actually pursuing his reality TV show career. Congrats, Thorin. It's awesome, man. I'm proud of you. In other news, MLG stickers were released a couple days early, at least the pictures of them, and they were actually released officially last night. And as all of you know, the actual CSGO people, the CSGO professional players, they do get a tiny proportion of their ticket sales, so they all took to Twitter trying to sell all their stickers. So it's pretty crazy to see. I didn't realize all the hype around it because you had all of these CSGO pro players tweeting out at the same time, my sticker's out, try and go and get one, because they're trying to make a little bit of extra money, which you can't obviously blame them for. But there also were these funny YouTubers who, of course, and all these people around the world putting these stickers on their weirdest guns. And here we have Anomaly. Great guy. This motherfucker wasting half an hour's worth of work on putting stickers on a default op. My goodness. And as always, when it comes to these news videos, I take a short break to actually watch the current tournament going on, which is the Counterpit finals of Navi versus Astralis. And let me tell you right now, it's tied 1-1, and Navi is dominating Astralis on Mirage. And I have never seen a team dominate so badly on the T side of Mirage. Currently watching that, and then I'll wrap up this video, but it is going to be insane. I mean, it is 10-1 right now on the T side. Like, what? So last news story of the day. What the frick am I wearing? No? Ba 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 meow. Last story of the day, Counterpit finals have finally ended. Navi beat Astralis in the last map 16-5. The first two maps were kind of one-sided, both teams actually in their favorite now. Navi did come back quite strong on the second map, but they eventually lost. I think that was Navi dominated the last map. Now the first two maps, the first map went quite strongly towards Navi. The second map, Astralis had a huge lead. I believe it was on Cobblestone or Inferno, and Navi came back. I believe it was Inferno. Navi came back, almost had it at the end, but again, still kind of a one-sided game towards Astralis. And the last game, Navi dominated. I told you guys, a few seconds ago on Mirage, 16-5. I mean, Navi looked incredible. I think they had at one point were up 11-1 on the T side. And so that's the Counterpit finals going to Navi. I believe the purse there for the championship was $80,000. It was $250,000 for the whole tournament, $80,000 to the victor. So congrats to Navi on that. And I hope you all enjoyed this episode of CSGO News. As always, leave a comment down below. How can I improve this series? Because I need help improving things. Meow. As always, live, love, laugh, lot. Remember, I like you, and I'll see y'all next time with another CSGO News video in a few days, and also some more other CSGO videos. So, yeah, I'll see y'all then.